Good morning and welcome to the Talk of the Town. My guest this morning is Dr. Asanka Wijesinghe, Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. Dr. Wijesinghe, when we speak about the hardships faced by the Sri Lankan people due to the stern austerity measures of the government, we need to discuss the disproportionate impact it has on vulnerable communities. We have the Samurdhi welfare payments, the Aswasuma welfare payments, other welfare payments which go to targeted identified individuals. But why can't we also, in addition to these, think of a more sustainable way of creating jobs for unskilled workers, untrained workers, the daily wage laborers, the sex workers who we are reluctant to acknowledge?
Yes, it is important to have welfare programs because any economic system will leave some people behind. That's why these welfare measures are practiced by countries all around the world. But I agree with you, like the government or any economic system should generate jobs, quality jobs for these people. So it is the most sustainable way to lift people out of power. The thing is, there should be certain policies implemented to generate jobs. For example, one way is bring in foreign direct investment to the country. Sri Lanka successfully did that in post 1978. We know the garment industry generated many number of jobs, quality jobs sometimes, which were resilient even in the pandemic. So in this case, the government should implement these predictable policy regimes, especially integrating Sri Lanka into the global value chains. In that direction, we see Sri Lanka is following some trade agreements. It is a way forward to generate more jobs. Meanwhile, it is necessary to rationalize these available welfare measures to make sure people who really need them are benefited.
When we talk about implementing reforms in a politically feasible manner, the government must look at the low-hanging fruit in order to best reduce the cost on the people. How do you view the upcoming elections, given the fact that during successive government regimes, we've seen policy instability?
Yeah, reforms should be gradual unless very swift reforms will generate severe adjustment costs. They disproportionately affect mostly the poorest segments of the country. For example, if there will be sudden changes to the tariff structure, agricultural producers are going to be affected. It is about 25% of the agricultural total labor force. Politicians don't like to bear that kind of cost. Instead of that, Sri Lanka can focus on SOE reforms which do not affect much of the population. Possible SOE reforms, for example, divest in Sri Lankan airline, is a possible thing government can do. And also it is very important to maintain a predictable policy regime when it comes to income tax and corporate tax. Sudden changes to these things discourage the investor. Also, land reforms are necessary. Land availability is identified as one binding constraint the entrepreneurs and investors face.
You are a trade economist. I'd like to pose my final question to you on trade agreements. Sri Lanka is scheduled to sign a free trade agreement with Thailand in the next few weeks, and several other initiatives as well. So, but it's important that we negotiate in such a manner that it best serves Sri Lanka. There is also misinformation, disinformation surrounding free trade agreements by labor unions, other trade unions, various other political factions. So how important is it to create a proper environment?
Yeah, trade agreements are reciprocal. That means if we get any tariff concession, we have to give something back. The protest is mostly when we talk about this, what we are going to give them. For example, which sectors will face lowered trade protection. That's why we see different protests. When it comes to service sector, people protest because they think that the competition for jobs will go up and their wages will be affected. To reap the best benefits from a trade agreement, it is necessary to include products that a country can productively, competitively produce. However, in recent trade agreements Sri Lanka have signed, for example, in the regional ones, South Asian ones, we see that most of the productively produced, competitively produced products are in negative list. That means they were not subject to a tariff. This should be avoided. Trade negotiations is a very delicate, sophisticated process because both sides have strategic ambitions. In this environment, the negotiators will have to navigate to get most of the products into the concession list.
But these are very important for a country, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Asanka Wijesinghe. It's back to the studio.